Hi, everybody. I'm your big brother in recovery, Abraham, coming back at you with another educational video on hopefully how to improve the quality of your recovery. I hope you enjoyed our last video. I know it was interesting because when I say interesting, I mean because I've been referring to the Alcoholics Anonymous book since you joined the channel. But what I decided to do, as you recall and look at the first video that I posted about us, I talked about doing a comprehensive approach to recovery because even though addiction is addiction, there are very different mindsets about addiction. And I wanted to pretty much show people the differences that we all had. And we all have the right to, let me adjust this, we all have the right to look at things differently. So what I want to do is I put up the history of Narcotics Anonymous because I know the history, and I'm quite sure some of you know the history, but I know many of you didn't know the history of Narcotics Anonymous. And you know, we are grateful for Jimmy K, but if you listen to the experts, not Abraham, the experts, the research experts on the last video about the history of Narcotics Anonymous, you will find that they said Jimmy K originally was an AA member. And prior to Narcotics Anonymous getting started, there was Addicts Anonymous, and they talked about the service that was provided for addicts in Lexington, Kentucky in the prison. But go back and look at the video, but I wanted to give you history before I started to dive off into the literature. So as I started looking and listening to the comments that were being made available to me, a lot of people were saying that, you know, Abraham, I really wish you can help me with the NA book. You know, I get the AA book and I love it, but I'm an NA member, and can you help us? Can you talk about it? And I started looking online and I noticed nobody was teaching from the Narcotics Anonymous book. So that kind of pricked my interest, not to show people my range, but I probably read the Narcotics Anonymous book as much as I read the Alcoholics Anonymous book and various other methodologies of recovery, because neither of the two are the only approaches to get clean and sober. So let me just share this with you about Narcotics Anonymous, because most people that I was looking at the videos were only giving leads. They weren't teaching, and people need more teaching as opposed to group therapy. The basic text of the Narcotics Anonymous book is divided into two books. Book one discusses the basics of the Narcotics Anonymous program and the 12 steps and traditions. But book two of the Narcotics Anonymous book is comprised of many personal stories, just like in the Alcoholics Anonymous book. First 164 pages, program. The rest of the book, stories. It Works How and Why offers detailed discussions of the 12 steps and traditions. The Step Working Guide. Right? The Step Working Guide is a workbook with questions on each step. Very good material. Just for Today. It's a book on daily meditations with quotes from the basic text of Narcotics Anonymous. Not only that, and other NA-approved literature, including the IPs, you know, the informational pamphlets. I challenge you to read those. I read everything, right? And last but not least, sponsorship. It's an in-depth discussion of the role of sponsorship in Narcotics Anonymous, including the personal experiences of members. So NA has also produced dozens of informational pamphlets, IPs, of varying lengths that cover a wide range of recovery-related topics, including questionnaires for those who think they may have a drug problem, and information for those addicts trying to stay clean while still inside hospitals or institutions. That's why they have the H&I committee. So what I'd like to do today, just like I did with AA, is give you an overview of step 2 as it relates to the book of Narcotics Anonymous, the basic text, okay? So the first thing I'd like to draw your attention to is, what is an addict? You know, the Narcotics Anonymous book clearly defines what an addict is, and it is found on page 3. Page 3 at the top of the Narcotics Anonymous book. It says, most of us do not have to think twice about this question. We know. Our whole life and thinking was centered in drugs in one form or another. The getting and using and finding ways and means to get more. I remember that. We live to use and use to live. Here comes our answer. Very simply, an addict is a man or woman whose life is controlled by drugs. We are people in the grip of a continuing and progressive illness. Notice what the basic text says. Same thing the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says, even though the basic text of Narcotics Anonymous repeatedly uses the word disease, and we'll get into that later, whose ends are always the same: jails, institutions, and death. You know, a lot of people don't really read the information, and it is asked to read the books because guess what? The fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous, just like the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, are different than the basic text of both of those fellowships, because guess what? In my opinion, the fellowship stopped reading the book. Watch this. At the back of your book cover, it says, many books have been written about the nature of addiction. This book primarily concerns itself with the nature of recovery. If you are an addict, we just read what that is, a person whose life is controlled by drugs, and have found this book, watch this. Please give yourself a break and read it. But notice, many people don't read it, but guess what they're doing? They're doing fifth step work. They're using the fellowship for sponsorship. But these videos are never about degrading people. It's always about upgrading people. And that's what I am known for, because we're all in this together. That's why I decided to integrate different methodologies of recovery on this channel. Now, I want to also show you something else that is interesting. Chapter 8, if you look at your table of contents, Chapter 8 tells me that we do recover, period. And it is noteworthy for you to notice that there are many people in Narcotics Anonymous who believe that we never recover. As a matter of fact, we just read it on chapter 8 of the table of contents. It's the title of the chapter. We do recover. But if we go to page 84, it tells us, and it's interesting, and it's noteworthy for you to notice, the first sentence of the first paragraph on page 84 says, we can never fully recover, no matter how long we stay clean. So that's interesting to me. But again, this is not a put down on the book, because the fifth must in the Narcotics Anonymous book tells me on page, what is it here? Where is it at? Abraham. The fifth must tells me on page 21. The fifth must tells me 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth paragraph, the first sentence. A second admission must be made before our foundation is complete. So guess what? We must admit that we can definitely recover, because you know what? Recovery is for us. As a matter of fact, they tell us throughout this book that the old lie, right before the introduction page is on XXV, So the quote to the left-hand side of the introduction page tells us we cannot change the nature of the addict or addiction. We can help to change the old lie. What's the old lie? Once an addict, always an addict. What? By striving to make recovery more available. God help us to remember this difference. Remember the difference what? Between an addict, one whose life is controlled by drugs, and one who's not an addict. My life no longer is controlled by drugs. Thank God for the 12-step program of Narcotics Anonymous. But some people are confused about that. But let's keep reading the book, right? I just want to get your feet wet because I'm going to give you something to think about. I'm showing you some contradictions, but I understand it, right? If you go to page 68 of the Narcotics Anonymous book, page 68, it clearly gives us the message of hope. The message of hope. Let me get there first because I want to ask an interesting question. Page 68, the last paragraph. Now this is Narcotics Anonymous's message of hope. What is our message? The message is that an addict, any addict, can stop using drugs. Wow. Lose the desire to use. That just said that, you know, when I came in tradition number 3, the honest desire to stop using mean I can actually recover the way as though I can lose the desire to use and find a new way to live. Our message is hope and the promise of freedom. So anybody that's carrying a message of hopelessness and bondage is not carrying the message of Narcotics Anonymous. If a person comes to you and tell you you never recover, that's not the Narcotics Anonymous book, because I'm reading in your book, it says our message is hope and the promise of freedom. So why would you tell a person that they never get better, they never get well, you're going to stay a dope fiend all your life? And watch this. When all is said and done, our primary purpose can only be to carry the message to the addict who still suffers. You know why? Because I'm no longer suffering. Watch this. Because that's all we have to give. So basically our message is we do recover, according to this book. But I'm not hearing that through a lot of people. There are quite a few out there who are carrying the bloodstained banner that we do recover, but there are a lot of people who don't. And if you look at, let's go to something that's really interesting. If you go back to the introduction, you'll find out. And this is not wedging or playing both sides to the middle, because I understand that. You know, I want to be peaceful with all people, but I do want to alert and drive your attention to reading as opposed to talking. Back on the introduction on Roman numeral page XXV, and History of Narcotics Anonymous video illustrated this point really, really well. If you look at the second and third paragraph, it says, in NA, we follow a program adapted or borrowed from Alcoholics Anonymous. More than 1 million people have, watch this, recovered ED in AA. Most of them just as hopelessly addicted to alcohol as we were to drugs. We are grateful to the AA fellowship for showing us the way to a new life, because we didn't know the way, right? The 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous are adapted from AA, or the basis of our recovery program. We have only broadened their perspective. So watch this. Everything was working, but we just twisted one thing. What did we do? We followed the same path with a single exception. Our identification as addicts is all-inclusive with respect to any mood or mind-altering substances, because alcoholism is too limited of a term for us. Our problem is not a specific substance. It's a disease called addiction. I'll go into that in another paragraph, but I want to show you we promote similarities but not differences, but here we look for a difference and we don't see the similarity that we all, whether you're gambling, overeating, masturbating, I'm not sorry to say that, but whatever your addiction is, guess what? It's an addiction, right? So the addiction comes before the substance, because we realize that drugs is only a symptom of a deeper problem. But what I'd like to do in this short video is read something from tradition number 3. And let me get to it real quickly because I know you have better things to do than to listen to me. And by the way, happy Mother's Day to all you mothers out there who are listening to the channel. And I wish you many, many more. You know, I don't have mine anymore, and I hope you're not in the club I'm in because there are millions of things I wish I would have said and can or could have done, but my mother is no longer here. So, page 65, tradition number 3. I want to start at the first paragraph, 1, 2, 3, 4, but I want to go 5 lines down into that. It says, an addict who does not want to stop using will not stop using. They can be analyzed, counseled, reasoned with, prayed over, threatened, beaten, or locked up. But they will not stop until they want to stop. Watch this. The only thing we ask of our members is that they have this desire. What desire? The desire to stop using. With it, without it, they are doomed. But with it, miracles will happen. So that tells me, and that pretty much covers step 1 for me, because we're on step 2 right now. And it's simply, do you have the desire to stop? Because we got to quit playing with people. We don't carry the addict, we carry the message. And until you have the desire to stop using, you got the desire to continue to use. So what I'd like to do now, if you would allow me to, is draw your attention to how it works. And let's take a brief look, an overview, because that's what this video is entitled, Step 2 Overview, Narcotics Anonymous Basic Text. Because I have 2 types of people that's on this channel. They all want to be educated, but from different perspectives. So guess what? Let's look at page 23 in the first 2 paragraphs. First of all, step 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. It's impossible to restore you back somewhere you've never been. So at some point in your life, you must have been sane in order to be restored back to sanity. So we found out in the Alcoholics Anonymous book, insanity had nothing to do with doing the same thing over and over again. It simply meant the inability to think straight, right? So sanity is the ability to think straight. So let's look at what the Narcotics Anonymous book says. The second step is necessary if we expect to achieve ongoing recovery, sustainable recovery. The first step leaves us with a need to believe in something that can help us with our powerlessness, uselessness, and helplessness. The first step has left a vacuum in our lives. We need to find something to fill that void. This is the purpose of the second step. Now watch this. Page 24. Would you kindly flip the page and look at the second paragraph? The process of coming to believe is similar for most addicts. Most of us lack the working relationship with a higher power. We begin to develop this relationship by simply admitting to the possibility of a power greater than ourselves. Most of us have no trouble admitting that addiction had become a destructive force in our lives. Our best efforts resulted in ever greater destruction and despair. At some point, we realized that we needed the help of some power greater than our addiction. Our understanding of a higher power is up to us because it's our own conception. No one is going to decide for us. We can call it the group conscious, the program of Narcotics Anonymous, or we can call it God. The only suggested guidelines are that this power be loving, caring, and greater than ourselves. Those are 3 great descriptions. We don't have to be religious to accept this idea. The point is that we open our minds to believe. We may have difficulty with this, but keeping an open mind, sooner or later, we'll find the help we need. You know, that's very powerful coming from the basic text, and I wholeheartedly agree with it, because we're not debating recovery right now. We're simply discussing it, because recovery is about upgrading, not degrading. There shouldn't be a wedge between us on both sides of the fence. Now I'd like to draw your attention to the Narcotics Anonymous step working guide, because I'm more often to the steps than I am the traditions, because no disrespect, I believe if you work the steps and live the steps, you will honor and do what the traditions say. But so many people know the traditions, but they elude or they're evasive when it comes down to working the steps. Now I want to caution you, and I can prove it. The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is the only book that's going to show you precisely how we have recovered. But the Narcotics Anonymous basic text will tell you what to expect. This is why they had to create other step working guides to show you how to recover. So that's what brings me to the step study guide, working guide. Now let's look at step 2 in the working guide. All right, let's go to page 11. And let's look at the 5th paragraph. The beauty of the second step is revealed when we begin to think about what our higher power can be. We are encouraged to choose a power that is loving, caring, and most importantly, able to restore us to sanity. Because if God is able, he's not looking for no ability. He's looking for availability. So the second step does not say we came to believe in a power greater than ourselves. It says we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. The emphasis is not on who or what this power is. It could be group conscious, right? But on what this power can do for us. The group itself certainly qualifies as a power greater than ourselves. I just shared that with you. We don't have to make step 2 complicated. So do the spiritual principles contained in the 12 steps? Because we know behind every step there's a principle, because only the principles will change your personality. So watch this. And of course, so does the understanding any one of our individual members has of a power, a higher power. As we stay clean and continue to work this step, we discover that no matter how long our addiction has gone on and how far our insanity has progressed, there's no limit to the ability of a power greater than ourselves to restore us or to restore our sanity. So, with that being said, I'd like to conclude. If I were you, I want you to read step 2 in how it works in the Narcotics Anonymous basic text. And you know what? The biggest investment, I get more people that ask me, how did I financially increase by holding the bag than how did I recover? And I'm not here to tell you, this is not a financial channel. This is a recovery channel. So the biggest investment is the investment in yourself, right? So invest in books, because you know what? All the answers are somewhere hidden in a book. So moving forth, what we're going to do from this point on, I'm going to teach from the Alcoholics Anonymous basic text, and I'm going to teach from the Narcotics Anonymous basic text, because you know what? We don't want to see anyone be overcome by addiction, all right? So look, press the like button, please, by all means, leave a comment. Share these videos with your friends in recovery and let me know how these videos are impacting you. And again, happy Mother's Day, and everybody just stay safe, because you know what? More to be revealed. I'll talk to you soon. Have a good one. Bye.